This is the world as seen by someone with macular degeneration, an incurable condition that affects more than 200 million people and is now the leading cause of blindness among the elderly. For decades, we've searched for a cure. But the greatest obstacle is not science or technology. It lies in another blind spot. A hidden barrier that delays the cure not only for macular degeneration, but also for other serious diseases, like cancer.
Every year that goes by when an effective drug should have been approved but wasn't, results in thousands or many patients dying or suffering unnecessarily.
Eu importo o que tiver. Se tiver medicamento na China, eu vou querer que esse medicamento chegue até mim.
People want access. They're tired of the government and of big pharma telling them what to do.
What is behind this blind spot that chokes innovation, shields monopolies, and holds back treatments that could save millions?
That means that they killed about 100,000 people. But as I say, that's not the way they reported the story.
What happens when red tape takes more lives than the disease itself? To find out, we first traveled to Puerto Rico to discover revolutionary treatments for macular degeneration and cancer. Then I'll take you to Honduras, where a regulatory process of the future is being built. My name is JEAN Hansen, and this is the Network Society. Welcome to the second episode.
Dia eu acordei, fui me olhar no espelho e senti uma dificuldade na visão.
In Brazil, I met Mr. Carlos, a retired lawyer who was diagnosed with age-related macular degeneration, or AMD.
A região central da retina se chama mácula. Mácula é a região responsável por visão de detalhes, nitidez, leitura, visualização do rosto das pessoas.
Eu tampando o olho direito, eu tenho que olhar para a esquerda para saber quantos dedos eu teria na mão. Aí eu sei lhe dizer, agora eu estou vendo a sua cabeça. Mas se eu fizer reto, eu não vejo a sua cabeça. Vejo os ombros, vejo o corpo, vejo o teto.
Still without a cure, the disease is managed only through palliative therapies.
Inicialmente, o objetivo é estabilizar a doença, para diminuir a chance que venha a se formar fibrose, cicatriz. Em segundo lugar, a gente obviamente tenta melhorar a visão, mas o objetivo inicial é estabilizar a doença.
Mas chegou uns 6 meses depois, viu que não havia melhora e aquela escuridão, aquela roda escura que fica na vista, não alterava de maneira nenhuma.
An experimental treatment with the potential to cure certain cases of macular degeneration is being developed in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a Caribbean island, officially an unincorporated territory of the United States. Fueled by major tax incentives, the island has become one of the world's leading pharmaceutical hubs. The capital, San Juan, is home to giants like Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca. Yet it's the startups and small laboratories that are driving the most innovative therapies and drugs. One example is Pachifina, an ophthalmology-focused company. I met its CEO, a lawyer who spent years working for Big Pharma, before deciding to bet on a groundbreaking treatment for certain types of blindness.
And so, but he said, but we have this theory, we have this strategy for the blindness that we think is gonna work, and we can't get anyone to take us seriously. And I'm like, whoa, what? You can treat blindness and people aren't taking it seriously? He's like, yeah, because, it starts going into it. And he literally said, we have this thing, can you help us? And I'm like, yes.
One of the diseases Damon aims to treat is the very one that threatens Mr. Carlos's vision, AMD.
For us, we're very keen on trying to find the root cause of the dysfunction. And that is essentially that a lot of the dysfunction in the retina originates from a very, very simple plumbing problem, which is if we don't get enough oxygenated blood to the tissues of the retina, it's not going to work, full stop. So when this little company had this theory that that's something that might be a problem, and if they could reopen a stenosis in the retinal artery, it's making quite a few assumptions, right? It's saying, hey, we think there's a stenosis, we think that we can identify it, we think that we can open it, we think it will help people, and we can't see any of that. It's just sort of a crazy premise from some people's perspective, and way too aggressive, I guess, in that regard. They disagreed, went to Argentina, ultimately got the permissions they couldn't get in the United States, were allowed to do a compassionate use patient, and was able to ultimately intervene in a way that was exciting, beyond exciting, because there was a noticeable improvement in the person's vision. So what we're going to work on is creating an imaging device that will see stenosis, because we know that if we can identify those people, then they're a candidate for this new treatment, and they can go into the clinical trial, and they might be ultimately the beneficiary of that new technology.
Excepcional esse trabalho que está sendo feito. Eu espero que chegue rápido para que eu possa alcançar ainda.
How long will it take before Mr. Carlos and so many other patients like him finally gain access to this therapy?
It is not approved, right? So this is an investigational device that is being evaluated in a clinical trial in Argentina. Where there's a will, there's a way. I am not going to articulate a timeline that is as slow as the normal timeline, because I think with something like this, there should be flexibility. So we're going to explore that and see what the agency will do.
It's frustrating to know that the standard timeline for approving a treatment with the potential to help millions is so slow and so costly. Other innovations struggling to reach those who need them most are cancer therapies.
The liposome vincristine can only be...
Cancer accounts for 1 out of every 6 deaths, making it the second leading cause of death worldwide, behind only heart disease. In San Juan, a company is developing a new kind of immunotherapy that promises to cure different types of cancer. I visited one of Cytoimmune's laboratories, located at Puerto Rico's main university. Dr. Tonia leads the research.
What we do is you come in as a patient, let's say, and then we're gonna take your blood, and from the blood, we're gonna isolate these particular cells that we work on. We send them to the laboratory. We expand them from millions to billions of cells, manipulate them in order to express factors that make them more specific towards your particular tumor. And then once that's done, then we infuse it back into you. So yeah.
And what's this stage? Like, if this already works or works for some disease, or
That's a great question, and the short answer is yes, it works. And I can give you an example of a patient. She's widely recognized for the success of this type of therapy. Emily Whitehead. She was diagnosed when she was about 6 years old with leukemia. And basically she got treated with chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and the standard care for cancer. No responses. She relapsed. So she was in a very critical condition, and it was a decision that her parents had to make in order to save her life. And basically, her doctor told her parents there is only one option. It's still in the experimental phase, but based on the data, it looks promising. Think about it, come back to me, and let us know if you want to put Emily into this clinical trial. They said yes. She got treated, and now she is 23 years old.
Wow.
No relapse, and basically this treatment cured her.
Although already available on the market, the treatment that cured Emily is extremely expensive, costing over $1 million. But the technique developed by Dr. Tania's team can treat multiple patients from a single healthy donor and promises to be far more affordable.
This is, very complex work, which requires a lot of regulations. And again, and it's because, we want a drug that not only works for the patients, but is also safe. I think within the next couple of years, probably 5 to 6 years, this therapy is going to be available to the public and also Brazil.
Even Puerto Rico, that combines disruptive science, heavy investment, and tax incentives to push the world's leading medical innovations, remains constrained by an outdated regulatory system. The path for a drug or therapy to reach the market is long because just a few agencies dominate the rules that shape global standards. Through a cascade effect, their decisions shape the agencies of every other country. This regulatory power not only dictates how quickly new treatments become available, but also which diseases receive the most attention from the pharmaceutical industry. At the center of it all stands the world's most powerful agency, the US Food and Drug Administration, the FDA.
Pathology speaks about this regulatory harmonization problem where basically the US is exporting all of its regulations to the rest of the world. So there's this monoculture, there's not as much regulatory experimentation.
The FDA holds immense power over what reaches the Western healthcare market. Without its approval, a new treatment cannot be legally sold in the US, and as a result, the chances of approval in other agencies drop dramatically.
How does the FDA medical regulation process work in the United States? You have 3 major clinical trials, phase 1, 2, and 3. Basically, phase 1 is safety primarily. So you give it to, say, 50 patients or less, ascending doses of the drug to see if there are any kind of toxicity signals. That's a usually pretty quick study and relatively cheap. Then you go into phase 2, which is powered more for efficacy. So is the drug working in the disease of interest? And that's a larger number of patients, usually a longer period of time, because you have to wait to see how the disease changes. If it's a chronic age-related disease, it can take a while, a couple of years to see that delta. And then phase 3 is the big kahuna. It's the largest study. These can be thousands of patients over multiple years. And these are very expensive. And generally, small biotech companies don't have enough capital to run their own phase 3 studies.
Together, the 3 phases can drag on for over 12 years. But the truth is, certain illnesses won't wait. In the early 1980s, the world faced the AIDS epidemic. With no hope of a cure, an HIV diagnosis was a death sentence.
You've tested positive for HIV, which is the virus that causes AIDS. But what we would like to do is to impress upon you the gravity of your situation. Based on your health, based on your condition, based on all the evidence we have, we estimate you have 30 days left to put your affairs in order.
Then in 1985, scientists discovered that the drug AZT could inhibit the virus. Patients began a desperate race against time to gain access to it. By then, the market was already under the FDA's grip. AZT, the only option at the time, was distributed solely through clinical trials.
Can you give me AZT? The next industries, they just released it for testing. Oh, and I want to buy some now.
That isn't how it works.
Okay. Here. How about this stuff overseas, huh? Germany, they got this dextran sulfate. All right, and they got this DDC in France, supposed to keep the healthy cells you got from getting the HIV. And they got AL721 over in Israel. How can I get some of this?
None of those drugs have been approved by the FDA.
Screw the FDA. I'm going to be DOA.
Because of slow regulation and the absence of approved options, many patients were driven to smuggle drugs from overseas. Yet most were left without access, resulting in premature deaths that could have been avoided. Imagine dying while being denied a drug that could have saved your life. In 1988, protesters stormed the FDA headquarters in the United States, demanding faster approval of therapies. Public pressure worked, and the FDA created new pathways to approve AIDS drugs. But by then, according to the CDC, more than 100,000 people in the US had already lost their lives. Centralized regulation has proven to be as deadly as the disease itself.
And my favorite story on this is the press release where the US FDA admitted to killing 100,000 people. They, for some reason, did not put the press release in that form. What they said was that they had decided to approve a beta blocker, a drug used to prevent a second heart attack. Beta blockers had been in use in Europe for, I think, something over a decade at this time, and there had been people arguing that the FDA should approve it. They finally approved it, and they estimated that its use would save 8,000 to 10,000 lives a year. Well, if its use saves 8,000 to 10,000 lives a year, and they kept it out of use for 10 to 12 years, that means that they killed about 100,000 people. But as I say, that's not the way they reported the story.
We often focus on the cases where patients are harmed by a pharmaceutical, and we say, hey, we should have been more careful, or we should have slowed this more. But actually, every year that goes by when an effective drug should have been approved but wasn't, results in thousands or many patients dying or suffering unnecessarily. So, say only 10% of drugs starting out from phase 1 clinical trials actually get approved, but that 10% might be saving a lot of people's lives. And so if it takes an extra several years to get them approved, these are people who maybe died or suffered in the meantime. So time is of the essence.
One example is Ozempic, a diabetes drug that took 22 years from discovery to final approval.
During that time, in 22 years, there were 1.2 million Americans that died prematurely from diabetes, many of whose lives could have been saved. So rigor is great. We don't want bad drugs on the market. But to be slow is also bad.
While the FDA aims to guarantee safety, its lengthy approval process creates an invisible graveyard. People who die because of regulatory delays and the ban on early-stage therapies for those with no other options. And every year, the pharma industry becomes even slower. In computing, Moore's law predicts that processing power doubles every 2 years while costs are cut in half. In pharmaceuticals, the opposite is happening. Called Irum's law, it shows that developing a drug becomes slower and more expensive over time. The cost is passed on to consumers, making many medicines unaffordable. Bureaucracy and high prices are symptoms of a monopolized system.
What's the problem with monopolies? Well, the cost increases and the quality of the product decreases. So the FDA and the people that run it are many good people. There's a lot of medical expertise, right? So much of the scientific rigor there is good and is warranted. Like randomized control trials are good. Like you have some of the best safety experts in the world and you should follow many of these guidelines. But it's not foolproof. And what do you need when it comes to finding solutions for the things that don't work? You need competition.
To witness firsthand how decentralization can overcome bureaucracy and slowness, I went back to Prospera, the startup city in Honduras introduced in episode 1. With a history scarred by dictatorships and corruption, Honduras is now experimenting with a bold project, a city with regulatory autonomy and self-governance. Prospera created a flexible regulatory framework for biotech and other industries. Nicholas is the founder of Infinida, a startup based in Prospera that leverages its regulatory flexibility to help biotechs launch their products faster and at lower cost.
To develop any of these individual drugs costs several hundreds of millions. What is the result of that? The company that makes these drugs, there's gene therapies that are approved, is very expensive. Like it costs upwards of $1 million. What we're trying to do is the opposite. We're trying to make it cheaper. We're trying to reduce the cost of all these regulations so it is more affordable for more people.
We saw that the cancer treatment Cytoimmune is developing in Puerto Rico may take at least 6 years to reach the market. If the lab were under Prospera's regulation, how long would it take to be approved?
Well, it depends on how safe it is and how much safety data we have. If it's safe and it's very easy to prove, then it could be as long as a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if there is, not sufficient data yet, then you probably do a safety trial here, right? So then you would try it out. But you could, even if you do that you could do in 3 to 6 months. We, through Infinita, want to make it possible for small biotechs to become customer-facing companies that end up competing actually with big pharma.
I think these special zones are reflective of what's going on in society all over the world. People want access. They're tired of the government and of big pharma telling them what to do. They want to do what's best for their health and make their own decisions.
Prospera's regulatory system allows therapies and medicines to reach the market as soon as they successfully complete safety trials.
Sure. Okay.
Companies working under this system is GARM Clinic, offering regenerative treatments for orthopedic and metabolic conditions. I was welcomed by Heather, the clinic's CEO.
Well, regenerative medicine is defined as cell, tissue, and gene therapy. Regenerative is more of a natural way to approach the root cause of a problem rather than just, using a conventional model where you throw pills and surgery at everything, but maybe you don't address the actual cause of the problem. We offer targeted stem cells for joint preservation. So you're aging, you've been hard on your body, maybe an athlete, maybe CrossFit, whatever the case may be, but you want to preserve those joints as long as possible.
Had they been approved elsewhere in the world, regenerative therapies could already be improving countless lives.
We do have gene therapies, and we have safe plasma delivery of gene therapies for follistatin. So the follistatin gene therapy has been really interesting because there's a lot of crossover between patients with orthopedic or autoimmune issues that could potentially benefit from the follistatin plasmid gene therapy.
Follistatin is a protein essential for cell and tissue development. Its main function is to inhibit other proteins that limit muscle growth. It holds the potential to revolutionize the lives of millions by treating the progressive loss of muscle mass associated with aging, which affects most elderly people. While follistatin therapy holds significant promise, it remains in its early phase, with data and expert opinions still divided. Brian Johnson, the American millionaire famous for his rigorous anti-aging lifestyle, underwent follistatin treatment at GARM Clinic, and later reported a 7% gain in muscle mass and a slow biological aging rate. Another example is Patry Friedman, an investor in the startup cities industry who also tried the therapy, reporting positive outcomes. However, some scientists have reported negative results on follistatin's effectiveness, raising doubts about its true potential. So how can we know if the therapy really works? The truth is that we still need more testing. But the key point here is, a regulatory framework open to debate and scientific verification helps reach that answer faster. When Prospera authorized early-stage follistatin therapies, multiple entities were able to test their efficacy and publish results in a decentralized way, a process far more dynamic than the FDA's slow, closed system. This open-source approach to regulation increases transparency and gives both patients and doctors the freedom to decide whether to pursue the treatment.
So we want very high WHO standards without the bureaucracy that slows things down, and without the FDA bureaucracy that keeps young companies somewhat handcuffed and physicians handcuffed in moving their therapies forward. And at the end of the day, that actually denies patients access that could really, really benefit from the therapies.
So that is the kind of world that we want. And sort of the old and the traditional world is stuck in a paradigm where the patient comes last. And then the doctors also don't have much choice. So they have certain legal requirements by regulators, by insurance companies and things like that. So it's basically a system that is, for you as a patient, you're kind of alone and you're stuck. And many patients with life-threatening diseases are often kind of having to navigate a very complex system that's not designed for their benefit.
As people suffer and even die waiting for therapies held back by regulatory monopolies, the search for alternatives becomes urgent.
So if we want to adjust regulatory processes and say, you know what, we're not going to do the normal bureaucratic incremental change thing, we're going to rethink the whole thing. If we created a reform regulatory warp speed program, right, where that was the mission, we can get it done. I'm confident we can do anything we want to do if we set our minds to it. So there's too many politics, as you know.
A burocracia não pode reduzir ou impedir com que a pessoa tenha acesso, pelo menos, a esses estudos e que ela tome a decisão.
Se tiver um medicamento na China, eu vou querer que esse medicamento chegue até mim. Se dá um resultado positivo, se existem alguns estudos, se existe uma orientação médica, né? Eu utilizaria e utilizarei.
Just like Mr. Carlos, countless people are waiting for access to new treatments. For some, they can offer a better life. For others, it's their only chance to survive. When someone is drowning before your eyes, you don't waste time testing the rope, you throw it. Only by finding the courage to decentralize entrenched monopolies and put people at the center will we create a society where more ropes are thrown in time to save lives.